Zero trust. It's a big thing these days, and last week we already talked about it, and today we're going to have the sequel. My name is Lieuwe Jan. I'm here in San Francisco today at the RSA Conference. So we are here with Threat Talks on tour, if you will, and the subject of the day is Zero Trust, the deep dive.
Welcome to Threat Talks. Let's delve deep into the dynamic world of cybersecurity.
Let me introduce my guest. Well, he doesn't really need an introduction, of course. It's John Kindervag. John, welcome. Zero Trust. Did you count the amount of times that when you walked at a conference here where there was a Zero Trust somewhere in some kind of advertisement?
I didn't have time, Lieuwe, because I went to one booth, which was my booth at Illumio, where I gave talks, multiple talks each day, and then I went back to the hotel where we're having our executive briefings with customers, and that's all I've seen of the show. Back and forth. I didn't even get to come to your booth, which I wanted to. Wanted to go there and grab a stroopwafel, and I didn't even get a chance to. So.
Yeah, well, we all ran out quickly, I have to say. Well, early this morning there were a few, but yeah, they're popular.
And
indeed.
If you've never had a stroopwafel, this is the great Dutch treat, you know?
Come to Amsterdam, yeah.
They have some food, they have, but stroopwafels, yeah. Stroopwafels and milk, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't come for the milk.
Oh, you wouldn't
Gouda
come
cheese, maybe. Gouda.
Gouda.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, apparently you're a very popular guy these days.
Yeah.
And I can tell how many, well, I didn't count them because it's impossible. It doesn't fit in my memory how many times. I mean, it's everywhere there.
Yeah.
And there's good reasons for it. We already talked about that a little bit last week's episode of this podcast.
Right.
By the way, the reason we want to talk, typically we have a few threats that we talk about in Threat Talks. We won't do that today because, well, in every episode, in the end, you almost always come up with something if Zero Trust comes up because we love to talk about the solutions as a result of threats. And, well, you need a strategy for this. We talked about what it means last time. And, yeah, time and over time and every time again, it's Zero Trust. And it's been there since... well, over a decade, 2010 when
2010, first report, yes.
First report about it, and it's still working. How many things in IT have that? I know of very little, maybe email.
Yeah, maybe email, yeah, sure.
You're up there with email and
but I mean, I think it's still,
packets.
We're still at the beginning stages of people doing it, right? So people ask me, what's Zero Trust 2.0? Zero Trust 2.0 is the mass adoption of it because I've spent a lot of time arguing with people about what it is because too many vendors wanted to spin the definition of Zero Trust to equal their product, right? So if their product was identity, Zero Trust is identity. Mm-hmm. If their product was a so-called VPN replacement, Zero Trust network access, that's what Zero Trust is. Zero Trust equal product. And there are no Zero Trust products. Zero Trust is a strategy, right? And that's what people are starting to understand. And so there will be multiple products that you will use based upon what you're trying to protect. That's what's different about Zero Trust. It doesn't start with the technology, it starts with what we protect, the protect surface. So instead of designing from the outside in, starting at the edge, and then putting all the switches in place and saying, plug your data in wherever you want, we don't care, which was the old way of doing it, right? Because you and I have built a lot of old school hierarchical networks. We say, what do we need to protect? And we'll design outward from there. And actually, for the viewers, one of the key tricks of Zero Trust, when you're whiteboarding a system to somebody, start on the left side with the protect surface and draw it outward from there. Instead of you normally started on the left with the edge and designed inward. And maybe you'll get to the thing you're trying to protect. So we start with what we need to protect. That's the actual revolution. People say to me all the time, I bought product X, gadget Y, what do I do with it? And I'll say, I don't know. And they'll say, well, you're the expert in Zero Trust, you must know. No, I have no idea, because what are you trying to protect? That's the fundamental question, right? And
do you have the feeling that not many people start at step number one?
Oh yeah, all the time it's articulating step number one, right? It's all the time starting with that, defining the protect surface. Now people are getting it. It's codified in the NSTAC report. We're doing work on that. There's a whole working group just on that one point at the Cloud Security Alliance. So people are starting to get that, but it took a long time because of the inertia. People don't like change, right? Don't move my cheese. There's a famous book in the US, Don't Move My Cheese. And I would often joke, yeah, I'm going to move your cheese, but I'm going to give you 3 pieces of cheese when you get through the maze, right? I'm going to give you more cheese, and it's going to be better cheese. Instead of that awful Velveeta, we'll give him some good Gouda cheese, where he's from. He's from Gouda. I can't even say it. It hurts my throat. Say Gouda.
It's Gouda, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Everybody under a different name.
Every Dutch person, when you're talking to them, you always feel like, I need to give them the Heimlich maneuver. They're choking. But no, you give them more cheese, better cheese. And people, when they've done it, they go, wow, this is revolutionary because it makes my life so much easier. I remember one customer who did it. After it was done, he said, we argued about Zero Trust for longer than it took me to build the Zero Trust network.
That's a good point. Just start, right?
Yeah,
and make it small, like how to eat an elephant, right?
Right.
One bit at a time, yeah.
And the other thing that same guy did is the week after he got it built, he went on a hiking trip in Saskatchewan where there was no cell service. He was so confident that it was up, running, operational, there would be no problems, that he felt good enough to go on this hike in the wilderness where no one could get a hold of him. And nothing went down. There were no problems. All the things that everybody said, this will never work, this will never work, the sky is falling, they were all wrong.
Well, we've proven one thing, it's that Zero Trust really does work and really brings you a lot of ease of mind indeed. Huh?
So people may not know this, but we have a long friendship back to 2013. We've worked on dozens of Zero Trust networks together, maybe hundreds, I don't know, at some level, hundreds. And so you and I know that it works, right? And one of the things that's kind of ironic to me, because we're doing threat talks, is that we both have this understanding that when you do Zero Trust, the threats kind of become immaterial, right?
True. The whole point is to make the threat talks obsolete.
Right.
You don't have to talk about it anymore. That would be best.
Because when you have a threat, there's no policy that allows that threat to get to that protect surface. Because in order for a threat to be successful, an attack to be successful, there has to be a policy that enables that. An allow rule, right? All bad things happen inside of an allow rule. So what you and I and other people who've been doing this a long time have all independently come to the conclusion is, I don't really know what the latest threat that everybody's talking about out there. I don't really have to do threat intelligence because the policy precludes that from ever getting access.
To me, a security operations center, like looking at the events and responding to them, and also to do threat hunting, that is there just as a validation, just to be sure. If despite all the efforts, still bad stuff gets through the trenches, then you detect it and you are able to respond. But indeed, well, yeah, we have a security operations center, but the focus of this, our goal is to prevent data breaches.
Right.
That's the whole point of the whole. It's not like, hey, I'm gonna do an MDR service for you, and I'm gonna get you a report that shows you why you should be fired.
Right.
Because these are all the things that are wrong. Right. That's not the point. And we. Our security operations center actually puts 90% of their effort or so in improving rule sets.
Right.
And that's, I think, how it should be.
Absolutely.
And not just cleaning up after keeping the tap open and water flowing and trying to mop it all up all the time. That doesn't make sense to me. So.
Well, I remember that in the 2.5 years I worked for you, we had one successful ransomware attack. I remember this happening, and it was a very small one. We caught it early. I remember you were very embarrassed.
Yeah, because this is the first time I have to admit that that something went through. That was
and I remember the talk to the CISO, and he went, "Yay! This is the best news ever! Wow, what a great day!"
Not really what I anticipated.
Yeah, and you were like, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "No, you don't understand. This part of the network that got popped by the ransomware attack, that's the part that hasn't adopted our Zero Trust best practices because it's an acquisition. And I can take this information to the CEO," he said, "and force them to do what I've been trying to."
Which happened overnight after that. Yeah, sometimes it takes a breach to become better, huh?
But his response was epiphanal to me, because he was like, "Yeah, that happened because they wouldn't do Zero Trust."
Yeah.
That was his response.
It's amazing, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, luckily we're still at 0 breaches in those environments, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the things that are at least perceived to be hard in Zero Trust.
Okay.
There's a lot of misconceptions. We already covered one misconception that's about how Zero Trust is not a product. Maybe
Right.
we should stress that as well. It's the way of thinking. That's what we're constantly talking about.
Right.
And make it small, start practicing. You have a wonderful slide in your presentations about the learning curve, for example. I mean, and if there's one takeaway, I think of this threat talk, it should be go for it and just start small and go do it and practice, get used, flip the switch in your mind, how it's going to be. But along the way, what we found with a lot of customers, there's always people objecting to things.
Right.
Like, it's going to be so hard to maintain a policy, for example, because you want me to write policy for every Protect service. Can you elaborate a little bit on objections you hear?
Boy, I hear a lot of objections, but the hard one is what I hear all the time, and that's a misperception. In fact, here at this RSA show, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I did a half-hour master class, a very limited thing of what we did in Zurich 2 months ago. But in 15 minutes, I was able to design a Zero Trust environment and show them how easy it was. In 15 minutes. And there was nobody who said, oh, I couldn't do that, right? Everybody was like, whoa, that's amazing. Because they have legacy views of how we do design and how we build these things and how we manage them. And there's a lot of new things out there. The technology got better and better, like I always knew it would. And so now that is propelling adoption of Zero Trust because it's making it easier. And we've had this discussion over and over again in our careers. Yeah. And so that's what I'm excited about is, I can get people really quickly going on a Zero Trust journey. In fact, I'm at a company called Illumio now, and you're an Illumio partner. And one of the things that I do with customers is I tell them your POC that you're going to do to validate that this is good, that's your first learning Protect surface. You don't have to pull it out and then start over again like we did in the old days. You're doing
so with Illumio, you get your first Protect Surface definition for free then?
Right, yeah, absolutely.
Wow. In a POV?
In the POV.
Costs you nothing?
Costs you nothing.
Like I said, Zero Trust is for free.
It is.
Yeah, great.
Yes. People ask me, how come you didn't trademark it and make some money off of it? And like, because if I would have trademarked it, nobody would have done it. Yeah. Right? We have a cloud because there's Linux and it's open source. When it was closed source Unix, nobody wanted to buy it and create clouds, so we would have never had clouds, right? So
there's still a lot of companies that push Zero Trust in many ways. One of them is to make SIM solutions more proactive, for example, or MDR solutions in general. Can you speak a little bit to that? How does that? Because many customers looking for, well, they buy equipment, of course, like firewalls and endpoint protection and cloud compliance software, or SIM solutions, SOAR solutions, log collectors, all that. What always strikes me is that there seems to be a lot of effort in that. Of course, there's many vendors that push for this, and it always feels to me like, hey, we're starting at step number 5. Could you speak a little bit to what do you see, for example, what's the role of MDR?
Well, I mean, people are afraid to enforce stuff. People are afraid to defend. People don't have the will to fight the fight, and so they'd rather, they just want to be able to, get all of this data, and they're not going to do anything with it, right? I covered SIM when I was at Forrester. I remember one guy said to me, well, I know, it's like telling my fortune with tea leaves. I know that I look in there, it should tell me something, but I'm not really sure what it is. And I said, oh, well, then if you had to do it over again, you wouldn't buy it. And he said, oh, no, I would definitely buy it, even though I don't get any value from it, because if I don't have it, I don't look like I'm a mature organization. It's security.
So the motivation to do this is not necessarily become better, become more resilient, but everybody does it, so I need to.
Right. When I was in Onto It, I wrote a blog post called "No More Sucking Chest Wounds," and I was riffing on an idea in Bruce Schneier's book "Secrets and Lies," where he's actually telling.
We all read it.
Yes, where he's telling the story.
Or we should.
Yeah, you should read it. Where you're telling a story from Marcus Raynham, where he's saying that IDS, which is a reactive technology, is like somebody walking up to you on a battlefield and saying, wow, that's a horrible sucking chest wound. I hope you get that looked at, and then walking away. And Marcus, as the story's related in the book, says, no, you should have body armor on to prevent this horrible sucking chest wound from happening. Yeah. And the weapons are so much greater that body armor isn't good enough. But people are still in that reactive, passive mode. So now instead of just IDS, we have a worse version of IDS called MDR, right? We have EDR, MDR, all these things that just say, here's a stack of needles. One of them's probably important. Good luck. I hope that somebody looks at that sucking chest wound. And my view is
Great
no
analogy.
more sucking chest wounds. Yeah. Sucking chest wounds are always bad.
So that means that then, would you also say that putting the money that you would put in MDR, maybe prioritize something else first, more?
Prioritize protection and prevention. Mm-hmm. Everybody's afraid of prevention. That is a very short-sighted view. That just means you don't have the will to fight the cyber war.
We speak a lot to CIOs and CISOs, and CISOs are really in favor of this, and they say, hey, yes, I made this internal document or internal policy. Hey, we should enable IDS in IPS mode. We should put firewalls everywhere. We should do all the prevention. We enable push a lot towards preventative capabilities of product, right? But then their CIO is measured on
uptime.
Availability, uptime. Yeah. So what would you say to a CISO? So suppose you are that CISO.
Yeah. The problem is in risk management, which shouldn't exist, we can accept a risk. Mm-hmm. And everybody says, is that going to cost money? I'm going to accept that risk. And then everything gets toasted and then people get fired. Okay? Mm-hmm. And it is a very short-sighted worldview. Mm-hmm. Right? And so it's because you don't have the will to actually fight the cyber war. That is the fundamental problem. It is a problem of human beings who are fearful of doing the right thing. Everybody's afraid of false positives. I mean, you and I have been around this game for a long time. We both started out doing real secure stuff, right? True. With ISS a long time ago.
It was ahead of his time, and nobody understood it.
Right. But, sometimes it was hard to get context. But since that time, I myself haven't seen real false positives in years and years.
I mean, we have so many debates with customers to we inherit the firewall rule set and everything is in detection mode only, or sometimes not even logging. And then finally we get to a point where we put everything according to our best practices and then nothing bad happens. I mean, that's always the story.
Right.
But it takes a lot of time to get there somehow.
Everybody's like, what if we stop the president's email? So what?
Yeah.
First of all, he's not going to notice because he doesn't know how fast his email comes in. But secondly, you would rather make sure, we're here at the RSA Conference where they're doing a lot of proactive security and they don't know whether or not anything bad is going to happen, but they're proactively securing for the first time ever. We have, right in the background, you probably can't see them, but we have metal detectors looking for weapons and things like that. So you do that all the time in other places, but you won't do it in your network, which, hey, let me tell you something about the network that you have. Mm-hmm. It's not a cost center. Cybersecurity is not a cost center. It is the foundation of your business. If your network goes down, your business goes down for everybody in the world.
Yeah.
So
it's like power.
It is. So think about an airline, right? When I was a kid, I worked at an airline. I wrote tickets by hand. I scanned passengers with a little wand. I fueled the airplanes. I loaded the baggage. I helped people get on and off. Occasionally, I even helped fly the airplane if there was no other passengers. So
I thought you couldn't talk about it.
So yeah, right, okay. That was a long time ago. But but we didn't have computers and we didn't need computers. Mm-hmm. Now you can have the 3 Ps of the airline business: people, pilots, and passengers. And if the computer system doesn't work, that plane isn't getting off the ground. Just not, right? That's how fundamentally important it is. Mm-hmm. And yet people still underspend and complain about the spend, right? And they complain about the acquisition costs, right? Mm-hmm. And I always tell them, acquisition costs are nothing. It's the long-term care and feeding of a technology, the operational expenditures, and then the legal costs if there's a data breach. People don't include that, right? Acquisition costs, we're both parents. The acquisition costs of our children are very small.
True.
the long-term care and feeding. Tyne
Yeah.
is how old now?
He is 7.
He's 7. My kids are 33 and 31. Still have operational costs associated with
Yeah,
that.
it won't stop
It won't stop.
for a long time.
Right.
Yeah, I was always hoping once he turns 18, it's over. But when I listen to you, it doesn't. Huh?
No.
No.
Well, you should know that from your own family.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Well, your dad is taking care of your kid right now, so
True. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
he's still got an operational cost associated with it.
But when I listen to you like this, it almost sounds like nobody should invest in technology that is not in some way preventing stuff.
Yes.
It's just reactive.
Yes.
But so much money is spent on pure reactive.
It's
stuff
because
to
they're
give
afraid.
insight.
So many people are Piglet, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know the poo Piglet, all right? So many people are Piglet. Piglet has so much fear. My job is to be Pooh and give those people courage. If you are afraid to do the right thing, the hard thing, you probably should be in a different industry. This is something the late great Dan Kaminsky said once, and one of the last times I met him at one of the last speeches I saw him give. He said, when people say, that's hard, I don't want to do it, he said, we're in cybersecurity. We worship hard. We worship the hard things. If you don't want to do hard things, there's another business that you can go into that is much easier. Go into that business. But commit to doing the hard things to make the world better. That's what cybersecurity is about, right? There's 3 adversarial businesses in the world. There's the military, law enforcement, and cybersecurity. And you have to be mission driven to make the world safer and safer and safer. And that includes being preventative and proactive in your practices.
So how can we help people that are in a position in an organization and they get this and they want to do more? And we talk to people all the time that say, yes, we should be preventing, but my CIO doesn't want to do this because he doesn't have the budget, or I don't get the budget, or they just simply don't understand. Suppose you get this, how can we
That's why
help?
we have to leverage this up to grand strategic actors. The President of the United States. I mean, when that executive order came out, I got a lot of little nasty, kind of snarky notes from people in the government. Yeah, thanks for that presidential executive order. I know
Now
I'm
we
gonna
gotta
have
get to work.
Now I have to work so much harder. But they're seeing value from it.
Would this be an answer? Suppose you are a CISO, or maybe you are in the security team in an organization, and you see things happening. I know there's thousands and thousands of people out there that see things going wrong all the time, and they'd love to put their IPS in IPS mode instead of IDS. They love to segment the network, but they simply do not get any traction in their own organization. Would you say, take that executive order, take the NSTAC report, go to the CEO and say, hey, listen,
Yes.
would that help?
Absolutely, right? I mean, one of my early reports at Forrester was, if you don't have IPS, you deserve to be hacked,
Yeah, I
which
love
is
that
about the difference between IDS, which is reactive, passive, and a separate technology called IPS. So when we said IDS/IPS, that was linguistically incorrect. They're separate technologies, right? One's bidirectional, one's unidirectional, one's passive, one's active. And so I deployed a lot of IPSs and IDSs, but in the whole time I deployed IPSs, I never once saw a false positive. It was a fear, an irrational fear that people had, right? And a lot of people have irrational fears, I mean, I hate fire, right? My wife has
But you love steaks.
I love steaks, but I have to have the automatic lighter thing and the turn in, and right? So it's an irrational fear, but it just is mine. I own it. These people have irrational fears of things that haven't been happening since the turn of the century. It's the 21st century, not the 20th century.
Yeah, so overcome those fears and have the organization overcome the fears. That's then key, and talk to C-level about C-level things. And in the NSTAC report, we keep coming back to. We'll put them in the show notes, by the way. We'll get links to the things we talk about, so for you to help and to create presentations. And we're always happy to jump on a call and explain, right?
Yeah,
We'd love
absolutely.
to do so. I mean, part of both you and you and my job is to spread the word on
Right.
on Zero Trust. It's nothing necessary to do commercially with our own organizations.
Right.
If it happens, great, but
Yeah.
that's not the primary goal. I mean, we need to make sure everybody gets Zero Trust, right? And happy to help there. And any other things I mean, on technical level, there's many things that we can help. If we're talking about putting an IPS in perfection, like what you said, it never blocks. Well, what we typically do is put IDS on and then go monitor for a month and see what would have been blocked, which is always zero, by the way, unless something really happened, right? And so it is there. If you have the right tools in place, then you can do it.
Same with Illumio, right? In our partnership, where we have a visibility mode, and then you can turn it into enforcement mode, so you can eliminate that fear. You can see, oh, nothing bad is going to happen. And I think that's what you have to understand.
So Illumio offers a fear rationalization engine.
Yes, there you go. Or a fear reduction engine.
Fear reduction, yeah.
Yes. FRE, fear reduction engine.
Yeah, let's tell the marketing department so they can register the .com. Yeah, so the product helps you doing this, or the technology is out there to make this happen.
Yeah.
And our message would be, hey, go do that.
Go do it. Just go do it. Start somewhere. Yeah. Everybody has to figure out, where do I start? Oh, they go worry about it. No, start anywhere. Wherever you start is the right place to start. There's no perfect way to do it. No perfect place to start. Wherever it's easy. I always say start with something that doesn't matter. That's called a learning protect surface, right? A place that if you screw up, you start over again. No harm, no foul. It's like street basketball in the US, right? Where if you're not bleeding, don't call a foul. Right, that's if you ever played street basketball, no harm, no foul. And so, do that, because then there's no fear that you're going to disrupt something that is mission critical. Yeah,
and another advantage of taking a less mission critical app is that you won't need permission maybe to do it. Huh?
Yeah,
at least less permission. Is there anything? So there's many different environments. I mean, in the era where the segmentation gateway was invented by you,
right?
Everybody used data centers, VMware, for example. That, of course, has completely shifted. When we're going in cloud, we're concerned about IoT. Is Zero Trust different in those environments, or is it fundamentally?
No, it's exactly the same. Zero Trust doesn't care where it's located, what it's doing, what the protect surface is. I've done it for IoT, all kinds of things, wind farms and manufacturing plants and smart meters, which are actually pretty stupid, believe it or not, and morphine infusion pumps and all kinds of stuff. So we don't care where it's located. We don't care if it's in a public cloud, a private cloud, in a virtualized environment, on a physical server, on an endpoint. It's wherever the DAS element is located, that's where we're going to do it.
Yeah, the control points change, right? I mean, obviously there's a different kind of firewall in the cloud.
Yeah.
And in IoT, it's in a different spot.
Right.
But the principles.
The principles. We apply the principles to the problem.
What's the role of AI in Zero Trust?
Oh man, I'm really excited about that, because everybody else is worried. Oh, the world is coming apart. They're gonna make attacks we can't defend against. But you and I both know that we can defend against any attack, because there's a boundary called TCP/IP, right? They can't go beyond that. So there's a limit to what they can do. And the reality is, as we already mentioned, whatever threat is out there, unless there's a policy attached to allow that threat to come in or to do something threatening, then Zero Trust is going to stop it. But AI is making it easier to operationalize. In step 5, that's really where I see the benefit, and step 4 in creating policy. So we just released at Illumio a new version of our software or our management console at this week, where we have a partnership with Microsoft where we're integrated with Copilot, and you can query it, write rules, tell it where's my PCI data, and it will show you. And then what rules would you suggest, and it will show you. And then you can just hit a button and enforce it. It's really simple now. And so this is kind of where I've been hoping it would get, and I'm starting to see it, that's why I came here to Illumio, because I knew it was going to make it easier and easier to build these environments.
So AI as an enabler for every step?
Yes.
Because, it can think of different things an AI can do in step 1 to 5 altogether, and maybe 5 is a big thing, and step 1 is a big thing.
Yeah.
Come to think of it, everything.
It works for all of that. We can leverage
I have a feeling that AI, the solutions that AI bring, in all those areas are much more value than the threats. Everybody's always talking about the threats of AI hallucination, for example.
Yeah.
I love that attack, honestly.
Yeah.
But of course the social engineering is getting better and better.
Right.
But we were with Zero Trust not betting on combating user awareness, increasing user awareness anyway.
Right,
I mean, if you have a perfect zero trust network, you don't care how many people click on this link.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if AI made a perfect email from me to my colleague say, hey, click on this link because I need this payment or whatever. That shouldn't matter. I mean, he can click on it.
Right.
That should be, if there's no rule that allows such a malicious thing to happen,
Yeah,
and that's what we're all aiming for.
absolutely.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
We learned a lot today about zero trust and about drivers, and I hope, I'm sure you were very inspiring to everybody listening in and sitting on this thing, zero trust, that needs to be out there, needs to be keep this good work coming.
And I want to thank you for your support, because you've been one of the earliest, if not the earliest adopters and the earliest builder. And so I thank you for your friendship. And this has been a great journey that we've been on together. So thank you so much, my friend.
Likewise. Thank you very much. To our viewers, thank you very much for listening and for viewing this podcast. If you liked what you saw, please like this video, because that means that more people will see it and more people will benefit from all the insights that John gave us today. If you want to see more of the Threat Talks podcast, subscribe to it as well, because every Tuesday you can expect a new episode in your inbox. If you have feedback for us, please email us at team@threat-talks.com. We'd love to hear from you. And from San Francisco, the RSA Conference, I thank you very much for watching and hope to see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Threat Talks, a podcast by Onto It Cybersecurity and AMS-IX. Did you like what you heard? Do you want to learn more? Follow Threat Talks to stay up to date on the topic of cybersecurity.